Test. And we are live. Thanks everybody for joining us today for Groundwater Talk Live for September 16th, 2021. We're happy you're here or you're watching it on replay. We're going to post this up at Facebook and LinkedIn for everybody. And of course, it'll be here on YouTube. So the Groundwater Guy channel, if you're looking for it there. So we appreciate you being here. We're happy today to have our guest is going to be. Let me just. My buttons aren't working here, so let's do it more manually. So today our guest is Rob Carruth, who's general manager of Potrero Mutual Water Company, located in Pine Mountain, California, in Kern County. It's a small mutual water company. I'd say it's medium-sized for a mutual water company, and Rob's been the general manager there for a while, and he deals with everything day to day, and he's a real hands-on guy. So I thought he'd be a great guy to interview and talk about general water system management and some of the particular challenges they face down there with arsenic and iron in their water supply, and some situations with aging infrastructure. So let's without further ado, let's bring on Rob. So, hey, Rob, how you doing today?
Tom? Good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. We're getting a little bit of a delay on your sound, but that's fairly normal. So, so how are things down there? At least you're not hit with the fires, right?
Yeah, we're doing pretty good right now. We're hit with the drought, but we're not hit with the fires yet.
Yeah, we've talked with a number of water systems out there that are dealing with the fires, and it's nuts. I mean, up near Lake Almanor and South Lake Tahoe, it's I guess there was a Herculean effort to save South Lake Tahoe, and they managed to pull it off, but some of the sizes of those fires is just crazy. So. And but the water systems are doing what they can to pitch in, so that's great. So at least you don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, we had a little scare. I think over the weekend there was a fire that sparked up, but was quickly put out. So I mean, it was a reality check for us because we're similar to Paradise with regards to one way in and one way out. So it's definitely a concern. The fire council's been looking at alternate ways to get in and out of our area, which there's been no resolution at this point.
Yeah, and those are not only one way in and out, but pretty windy roads coming in. I know. So it's not like you could fly out of there at 90 miles an hour on those roads. So so
No,
yeah,
not at all.
yeah, you're right up in the mountains, tucked right on the San Andreas Fault, coincidentally enough. So that presents some unique geologic challenges too. So, but fortunately, you haven't had any rumbling or movement activity down there for a while, I guess. So,
No.
does that play at all into your any emergency plans or anything? I'm sure you must have some earthquake types of considerations out there.
Well, from an operations point, every time there is an earthquake, the operators are sent out. They go and they do a little bit of leak detection, listening primarily at the tanks and doing visuals. So we do have it in our protocol, but any kind of emergency, of course, the state has us planned for that. So whether it be fire, flood, which is not likely in our area, but we do get that 100-year rain, so you never know.
Yeah.
But more likely that a fire is going to be our biggest threat in this area. And so, yeah, we're definitely concerned about that. And we have protocol, and we work with, I don't know if you've heard of a CERT team, but it's kind of a spinoff from the fire department where you have a group of volunteers who are trained in incident command. And so there's a large group of those folks here in our town, and they've been privy to our emergency response plan, and they can play a big part in that and help us out. So,
Okay.
there's definitely a lot of planning and with regard to emergency response in this area, being so isolated.
Yeah. Yeah, you're isolated and you're surrounded by national forest on pretty much all sides too. So I imagine you might get some help from those folks, but still it's a tough situation nestled in the valley where you're at. So all right. So maybe just we can back up a little bit, and you can tell us a little bit about how you got your start in the business. You've been at Potrero since 2008. Is that correct?
2007. I believe it was
2007.
August of 2007. Yeah.
Okay. And
So I think mine's similar to a lot of people where they kind of fell into it in a sense. But before that, I went to school to get my teaching credentials, and the plan was to, teach history and coach basketball and live in some rural area in Alaska since I grew up in Southeast Alaska. So that was the big game plan. But, things happen. You meet people, you get married, you have kids. So was teaching, moved to California and realized that you really can't make a living on a teaching salary. And so that was a reality check for me when trying to purchase a house back in 2006. So similar to the situation we have right now, prices were through the roof. So I started looking around to do something different, and I saw that they were hiring local. I had talked to some people with regards to how to get certified in water distribution and water treatment. And so I went ahead and got my distribution license, and then I went out and looked for a job, and that's how I ended up at Potrero,
interesting.
which is
Where?
in Pine Mountain Club, 9 miles from my house.
Okay. So where did you get your distribution certificate? How did you get that?
So I applied with the state, and this was before they were doing everything computerized. And I went to a local library in Granada Hills down in San Fernando Valley, the Los Angeles area, found a book, uh, and it was all I needed for the studying. And it was right before they changed everything, and so it was all by hand. It was a little packet, and I did really well on it and got my certificate because for a D1, T1, you don't need anything. You don't need a class. You don't need any experience, and so I brought that with me when I came for. Well, originally I actually looked. Oh, sorry, my radio is still on. Apologize.
That's okay.
Um, yeah, originally I started looking the other direction because from my house, um, most people go towards the I-5 to look for work. And I had not even realized that I could go the other direction and go west, and that there was this large community 9 miles from me that had a very, in my opinion, a medium to large size mutual water company, because you usually don't see a mutual water company with just under 3,000 connections. They're usually a lot smaller from what I've
Right.
gathered, but California seems to have the most of them. So yeah, it just kind of happened. They were hiring, and I was looking.
Okay, but you didn't go on start as general manager. You started
No,
turning
no,
wrenches. Eh?
no. So they had a hard time finding the general manager that was leaving at the time back in '07 or 2007. Sorry, he was trying to retire, and they had a hard time finding someone to replace him. So they had just found somebody to replace him, and they were doing the interviews together, and they were looking for some workers. Basically, they were looking for operators and some lead workers at the time. And so I ended up there, and then the general manager that was retiring finally got to retire and move on. Um, the general manager that came in, I think for the most part, was coming in to restructure and provide change. And I think he basically did what he thought he needed to do after 5 years, and then it kind of got to the point where he said, "Okay, you guys don't need me anymore." And that's where when I moved into that position, he was getting ready to retire. He was older,
Yeah.
came from a big water company, so I think he felt like that he got everything in place. He mentored me, and I went back and got my MBA, so I could learn a little more. And I had learned a lot during that time period from '07, 2007, sorry, 2012. I learned a lot with regards to water treatment and water distribution. So it just lent well for me just to move right into that position when he left.
All right. So tell us a little bit about Potrero. I mean that's kind of you had some opportunities there and you moved up, and obviously your credentials were good. And I know you personally, and you're a hardworking guy and a problem solver. I like to say you're the roll up your sleeves type of guy and get in and get things done. So I so that's I have no doubt that that's how you got advanced up there to the general manager position. And I know the board likes you. I've been to some of your board meetings, and they like you, so and have a lot of confidence in you. But tell us about Mill Potrero. You said they had around 3,000 connections, but a little bit about your water sources, your pressure zones. I know you got several pressure zones, your storage capacity. I know you got some unique topographic constraints. There's some pretty good relief out there. You're sitting down in a valley, but there are some there is some relief considerations as far as topography goes, and just kind of some of the layout of the district. I know you got the map right behind you there, but
Yeah.
that's not
Those-
coming up for you.
So the rest of my office has got really bad lighting in the sense that the lights are kind of messing with the video. So this was the best spot. But yeah, as you can see by the map, it's a pretty large area, and it's the geographics of it is just basically all mountainous. It's very hilly. So at the bottom where we have most of the wells, it's about 4,100 in elevation. And so I have 6 active wells, 2 standby wells, and 1 well, number 9, as you know, that we're trying to get approved by the state right now. And so those wells just start pumping up, as you can imagine, almost in series, where they're going to pump up to the treatment plant. And then at that point, they'll go through retention, filtration for iron manganese removal. They go into the clear well tank, and then they start boostering up. And they'll go up to C tank, to D tank, to E tank. And so they just keep going up the mountain. And so you'll go as high as I tank, where the elevation has now gone from 4,100 at the wells to we've pumped all the way up to 6,500. Well, now it's coming back down. And so, pressure is not a problem as far as like getting pressure. Most people are concerned about getting enough pressure. Well, we have too much pressure. So as it's coming back down, we have a series of 16 different pressure reducing stations, and each one of those has got 2 pressure reducing valves in it, and those are in vaults throughout the town. So this whole community, the water system was planned and engineered very well. So it was laid out in a way that would make sure that everybody had just the right amount pressure throughout the mountain, but in some cases the pressure was still too high. And so even with those pressure reducing stations, the customers have to be aware of the terrain, and they have to have a pressure reducing a valve at their own house. And so that's probably one of our biggest things with regards to daily operation is just the electricity to pump all the water up. I think our electric bill is about 100,000 a year for the pumping of the water. And so, pumping it all up and then gravity feeding it all down. And then there's 4 areas where our tanks aren't above the customers, but maybe right at or just below. And so we have 4 hydropneumatic tanks as well. And so we're able to serve everybody in our community with the ample pressure by providing those 4 hydropneumatic tanks. And so, the tanks, the storage tanks, they go from 100,000 to 750,000 in capacity. And again, they're just almost staged in series just to keep pushing it up and then bring it back down. And we have about 20 booster pumps associated with that. And all of our wells are submersible. So that's kind of how the water gets from one place to another. And then, all the maintenance that goes with that. And so one of our biggest headaches would probably be maintaining those pressure reducing stations. They're seeing a lot of pressure and a lot of water going through them. So those are definitely things we keep an eye on all the time.
Okay, so you have, the wells you have various ages on them, and I know you're kind of coming up on the lifespan or the end of life cycle for some of those wells, and just how are you dealing with some of that? Because that's an issue that a lot of I talk to a lot of water districts, and it's certainly an issue a lot of people face is how do we squeeze a few more years out of our wells, and what kind of replacement schedule, and so what kind of decision making considerations go into that, I guess.
Well, I think when I originally thought about my wells, I thought, well, they're there, and I think a lot of people go, well, they're there. You don't have to do anything with them, they're just going to pump water, and you got to do your maintenance on, everything that breaks above ground, but you can't think that way. The wells, you don't know what's going on down there, but you need to know. And so I've come to realize that you do need to open them up every now and then. You do need to find out what's going on. So recently we just opened our well number 5, which was that one was drilled back in, I believe, 1985. So it's one of not the oldest ones. We have ranging from 1969, wells 1 and 2, and then well 3 and 4, 1971, and then they started drilling again in the 80s. What I realized with, for instance, well number 5, the last time I was in there and pulled that well out was in 2014, and we just pulled it again last week. So, it's been a little bit of time. And so I've realized with these ones that aren't stainless steel, that don't have maybe the top of the line material in there, you need to open them up every 5 to 8 years, in my opinion, where we're at. Most of mine are steel casings, but some of them have plastic liners inside of them. So they started off maybe in the 80s or in the 70s with a 14-inch casing, and some of them now have 8-inch liners on the inside with gravel pack now around them. And so we've done our best just to try to keep these wells going as long as we can. And so, you got to check the gravel pack, you got to check the water levels, you gotta pull the well every now and then. And when I pulled well 5, I thought it was just inefficient because the pump and motor was getting old and inefficient, but there was a good sized hole in one of the pipes that basically was hemorrhaging, and that was shooting out and hitting the wall of the liner inside, wearing a hole into that. And so, open it, get a video in there, let the water settle out. If they're coming right away, see if you can get some clean water down there, a hose, and get a good look at what's going on in there. And that's my advice, going, doing rehabs on these wells now for over like 10 years is get a video in there before and get a video after, and really know what you have down there. It's your one and only chance.
Well, I'm in 100% agreement with that. How often do you video your wells?
Every time that I open them up, I video them. So
Okay.
again, it's going. It depends on the well. There was some well number 7 and 8 were drilled. One in the late 90s, and then one in 2004. They actually have stainless steel casing and the stainless steel screens. And so I could go maybe 10, 12 years without having to look at those, it seems like. And that's just from experience with the wells that we have, with the water quality we have. We have a lot of iron, and so some of the wells have iron bacteria that can start eating away and having build up on your pipe. We have the manganese. One of the wells, when well 5 was drilled, we had a well 6 was drilled at the same time. It just had too much manganese, and we haven't really utilized it. So iron, manganese, and now one of the big things is we're also dealing with is arsenic. So, getting in there and finding out what you have. My suggestion, if someone was taking over a water agency recently and they don't know anything about their wells, and they don't know the last time they've been opened up, they might want to consider pulling it, just getting a video down there. I know it's not the cheapest thing, especially when we're so far away from, say, Bakersfield or Los Angeles. It's a little more expensive to get somebody out here, but I think it's worth it just to pull the pipe out and just take a look and see what you got. And then you can plan from there. You may not need to do any work, but at least you know what you're up against.
Plus, you can track how they deteriorate over time, so you can get a sense of when you might need to go in and rehab those things. So I'm a big fan of doing regular well videos, as you know. So, and I spent a lot of time looking at them and just tracking the progression over time. And every well, and you got that situation too. Every well has its own character, so they're just like people. So it's every well is going to be a little different. You got to track it a little different, and it may have a whole totally different rehab uh, uh, schedule that you need to put it on. So that's good. Thanks for that reminder, because I look at the cost of well videos compared to everything else and think that they're just cheap insurance. I mean, they're not that expensive, and just when you're pulling out your pump to maintain things, run a video and see what you got. So I'm in agreement with you there.
I wish I could find a way to get the video down there without pulling it. That would be the key.
Well, there are some cameras out there, but it's there's some small cameras that 3/4 inch cameras that you can supposedly thread past the pumps, but they have their limitations, and I find that in about 50% of the cases they can't actually get it past the pump anyway. So it's kind of hit or miss on that. But there are some opportunities, and I can talk to you about that offline too in more detail. But there are some tools out there, but there are limitations as well. So, but yeah, timing it with pulling the pump when you're doing pump maintenance, I think is a good way to go, and that works for most people. So you
Yeah.
got arsenic issues, and I know that in the valley you're in, one side of the valley has arsenic, the other side does not. So the south side, I think, is arsenic, and the north side is low arsenic. Is that am I remembering that correctly?
No, it's the other way around.
Oh,
So
okay. Sorry.
yeah, the north side basically has the arsenic, and then the south side, for the most
Oh,
part, we
that's
haven't
right.
had
Yep.
any issue. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so of course the last three wells that were drilled were all on that north side. So we have our older aging wells with the water quality. Um, as far as arsenic's concerned, the water quality is better with zero arsenic for wells 1 through 6, and 6 and 1 are standby wells. But so 2, 3, 4, and 5, no arsenic. But now my last three wells, 7, 8, and 9, of course, have some kind of arsenic. Now 7 originally was in compliance until compliance changed, and so we went from 50 parts per billion to 10. So then well 7 was out of compliance, and so we started blending at that time to be in compliance. So that is, in a sense, our treatment. And so our treatment consists of taking well 7 and pumping it while well 2 and well 5 are running. And with that, you can do your calculations and basically reduce the amount of arsenic going into the treatment plant. And then by the time it's ran its course to the treatment plant, went into the sediment tank and the filtration and the clear well, it's had a good mix and a good blend, and it's been reduced to generally under 5 parts per billion. And so the state has approved that as our blend treatment for arsenic since, I believe, about 2010. So that's what we've been doing. So when looking for new water sources, we were trying to find a well on the south side of town and also a well on the north side, because we knew one was going to have the quantity, at least for sure. And then the other one we were hoping would have the water quality, and we could continue to blend. Unfortunately, it didn't work out the way we planned, as things don't always do with drilling wells. And so we ended up with another well that had arsenic that was over the maximum contaminant level. So now the big push is to see what's the cost to remove the arsenic. And so we started a pilot program about 3 weeks ago. We're 3 weeks into it, to see if just a simple addition of ferric sulfide at the wellheads mixed with chlorine injection is enough to basically get that iron to remove the arsenic, and then we'll continue to run it through our iron manganese treatment plant. And so in the end, the treatment plant that we're using to remove the iron manganese will now remove the arsenic as well. And so that's what we're doing right now. It's been successful. And so the biggest concern that we have, I believe, is going to be our discharge portion of that. And so we're working to see if we can still continue to discharge the way we have been into a pond that's close by to our treatment plant. And so that's one of the big hurdles I think we're going to have to work that out, and then where the disposal might be for any sludge that's remaining.
I know that that's the challenge of getting rid of arsenic waste is what do you do with it, so, and for you to haul anything is financial a big financial constraint because it's a long ways to anywhere from where you're at. So
Yeah.
that's tough. So you got to try to do on-site disposal or disposal as close as possible. So has the state been working with you pretty well on that?
Yeah, well, when we first talked to them about our discharge permit, they were a little baffled because I had a 1.5 page discharge permit, and they referred to it as a unicorn. And so at first I said, what? And then I had to think about what a unicorn meant. And basically they didn't know we existed. So once we told them we existed, it became more problematic for me. So,
Yeah, now you're
so,
on the
so
radar.
we,
Yeah.
yeah, so now we've done a baseline sampling of the pond, and we did a baseline sampling of our backwash water. And then once we do our final backwash after running the pilot program through the filter beds for the course of a month, or we might go 6 weeks. I'm not sure if they'll let us go a little longer. We want to go a little longer. Um, then what we'll do is we'll do a backwash. We'll sample that backwash water, and then we'll report that back to the state and see if there's any more requirements, which I know there's going to be more requirements. And I have a feeling it's going to be more sampling. And
Yeah.
that might be a little more costly as we look at the O&M costs. It could be an additional, you know, $200 a month in sampling. Maybe every time we backwash, maybe we have to send out for sampling. So that's one of the concerns I have. And then chemicals, getting chemicals where we're at is a concern. Most people just say no, they won't deliver. It's not worth it for them. And then if it is, it's super expensive. And so that'll have to play into the cost as well. Currently, right now, we try to pick up our chemicals ourselves, which most places that we can get them is an hour away. And we can only get a limited amount without getting into hazmat license and all that. So that's going to be one of our hurdles, I believe, is going to be chemical delivery and then storage.
Well, yeah, I know you make a lot of trips to Bakersfield yourself, so you got
Yeah.
that rundown,
Yeah.
taking samples in and everything else. So yeah,
Yeah.
so so well, that's interesting. Keep us posted on how that arsenic treatment goes because that looks like a fairly inexpensive way to deal with your problem because. As I understand it, your older wells are the cleaner wells, and as those age out, now you're going to have higher concentrations of arsenic coming into the system. So looking at a treatment option is your best bet right now is try to get that figured out before it becomes critical, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And there's other things that we're going to have to do as far as capital improvements to make sure that everything flows properly and we have enough contact time. We did find some deficiencies in our system once we started the program. Different things that you can imagine could go wrong once you start pushing your system a little bit. And so
Right.
we tried to stress it out. We tried to stress everything out as much as possible to see what could go wrong if we go, because it's a full scale pilot program right now, but what could go wrong in the future. And so we tried to find all those, work out the kinks. And what I realized is that some additional contact time would be great, and or possibly adding some polymer to that as it's right before it goes into the filter beds, because I feel like it's still removing as it's going through the filter beds. It's not fully been oxidized, and so I think we probably could use maybe another 5,000 gallons worth of uh, you know more as far as the retention tank goes. just a little bit bigger, a little bit more contact time.
Yeah. Well, and that's the purpose of the pilot test is to dial that stuff in. So,
Yeah.
so you're doing exactly right, I think. So, okay. Well, that's interesting. So, how about the rest of your infrastructure? I know that you got, the typical, you know, some pipes here are older than others, and valves break and you spring leaks. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your capital improvement program because I know you got one and got it in place, which is more than a lot of mutual water companies have, and then a little bit about your leak detection and management as well. That's usually of interest to folks.
Yeah, so our capital improvement plan, we usually put aside anywhere from 400 to 600,000 a year for projects. And so those projects can range from meter changeouts. So we have a meter swap program, but we joke and say we need a valve swap program, or there's or a pump swap program because deferred maintenance is a thing, and the reality of it is capital improvement is not really necessarily what we're doing more than just big maintenance projects because our water system's not going to go out. It's not going to grow any bigger than it is. It's confined to where it's at in the national forest. So most of what I talk about with capital improvements is just deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
A tank, the top needs to be redone. We need to change out, so many pumps a year. Hydrants are not maintenanceable anymore, so they need replaced. That's a capital improvement in our aspect of it. So that may not be your typical capital improvement. We're not adding on. We're just replacing things that are too old to fix anymore. And so we started with hydropneumatic tanks. We replaced all the hydropneumatic tanks. They're not as easy to dive in and clean live like you can do with your reservoir tanks. We had a huge project to clean out our reservoir tanks not too long ago, and that depleted our budget, but we rebuilt that back up. We used that money for new well development. As you know, we looked for 2 new wells and we got one. And again, we have these little projects like changing out the meters and changing out the hydrants and changing out the pumps. There's also our capital improvement plan looks at our assets as far as even our equipment. Is there any big distribution equipment we need? Do we need another backhoe? Do we need another dump truck? Do we need something different? Do we need to be EPA compliant? A lot of our generators were deemed out of compliance, and so that was a huge thing to change those out. But the big concern going forward, I believe, is going to be changing out the main lines. And so we've been trying to put a lot of money aside for that. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's going to happen soon. Our main lines, for the most part, are asbestos cement. And so they're in pretty good shape, but at some point they're going to need to be changed out. We had our 50-year anniversary. So they're 50 years old. And then through the as you're connecting from one street to another, we might have a line we call a cross-country line, and that crosses through a greenbelt area or through the woods. Those lines are ductile iron, and we're seeing deterioration of the Portland cement on the inside, and then you're left with the really thin metal. And so those are starting to wear out and will need to be replaced sooner than later. And so those would be some big projects that we might start looking at some state funding. We haven't gotten into that yet. We're still in cash and carry for 50 years, but it might be time to start looking at some of that state funding and federal funding at this point to do some of these big projects.
Sure, it's pretty amazing you've been able to cash and carry and self-fund it all yourself. I mean, that's really a solid asset management program when you're doing that because most people it becomes a crisis and they're trying to get the grants and the grants take a long time to get. So it really can be challenging. So you guys have it pretty well thought out from what I see. I mean, when you're up close and personal with it, it may not seem like that, but when you're looking at other districts, what other smaller water districts are doing, it's pretty amazing what you're doing with your asset management program. What you call deferred maintenance, I just call asset management because you're really looking at replacement costs and those types of things. I know you call it your capital improvement program, and that's an easy term to bandy about, but it's really
Mhm.
asset management. So how about
Yeah.
leak management? How do you handle that?
So we try to do a drop down test every 6 months because what we've noticed is we have a leak season, we call it. We kind of joke around a little bit, and that's usually in the fall and the spring. So in the fall and the spring, what we'll do is we'll turn all the pumps off and we'll just monitor the levels. And I'll have a guy actually come in at different times through the night because that's the slowest time, and he'll record. Well, we used to do it that way. Now we have a new SCADA system. It records it for us, so we don't have to come in anymore. That's about a year
Nice.
ago. Yeah, so it used to be a guy had to come in and write the numbers down. Yeah, so now you can just go back and look and say, "Oh, look, this was the take levels through the night." So basically, we look at all the tanks and see which ones have dropped down the most, and then we hit those first. And so basically, two guys go and they do almost like you would do with basically leapfrogging, similar to what you might do when you're flushing hydrants. And they have acoustic equipment. We have LD10 and LD7 subsurface leak detectors, and basically we listen. We go to every meter, we pop open every meter box, and we just comb every area, and we start with the sections that we believe that have the leaks, the ones that had the most water loss during that drop down test. So we start with the drop down test, and then we go full scale, full system leak detection twice a year, or as needed. So there could be a scenario where the operator goes, "Hey man, we're really losing a lot of water out of a tank. Something's going on." So we'll run over there, we'll drop what we're doing, and sometimes find a 25 gallon per minute leak that was undetected that's
Well,
just, you don't see it. It's not bubbling up. You don't know where it's going until you hear it. And so that's what we've been doing so far. I've called people in. We've hired, and to be honest, their equipment is not any better than the equipment we have. And in some cases, they can't hear anything any better than I can. So we've just been doing it ourselves.
well, yeah. If you got the capabilities to do it in house, then yeah, you're better off. It keeps the money in house and lets you spend it on other things because there's never enough money to go around in a water district. Seems like.
No,
Yeah.
no, no.
That's for sure. So if you can keep it in house, that works good. Well, interesting, yeah, because water leaks are the bane of all water districts, and tracking those things down can be challenging. They're springing up underground, and like you say, if they're
Mhm.
not daylighting, how do you know
Yeah.
where they're at? You got to listen, and it's a tough thing, and people talk about it all the time. Sounds like you're doing a pretty good job on that account too. So so how what are the biggest challenges facing people these days, and not just in the water business, although it's been ongoing in the water business, is getting and keeping good personnel. And I'm sure you're not immune to that as well.
Yeah, it's funny. It just came up today again. There's a big outpour of one of the local communities near us. Fraser Park Public Water District is a district that is having that issue right now, where they don't have even enough manpower to do meter reads, and so the customers had a
Wow.
big complaint that, why is my bill being estimated? Well, they couldn't get anybody to go out and read the meters. And so, it's one of those things, when you're reading them by hand, you need to have people that can come read them by hand. And we're still reading ours by hand. And so we do it quarterly. And I know a lot of agencies are doing it monthly. And now that's very onerous, because in our case, it takes us a week with two teams to go out and read the meters. And so we do it quarterly. And so one of the things I'd like to look into is getting automated meters that could help with that. And so, yeah, the biggest complaint right now is that, or the biggest running joke is, do you know anybody that wants to work? And, from one manager to the other, we just laugh and go, yeah, right. You know, somebody that wants to work? No, sorry, I can't help you. And I wish I could. I don't know anybody that wants to take an extra job or work part time. I don't know anybody that out there that's, if they're collecting unemployment right now, unfortunately, a lot of these guys are just doing cash job pickups. And so I see people out there working, because those are the people you want. You see somebody working, I have to go out and find people. Where I live, you go find people and say, "Hey, do you want to come work for me?" I can run an ad for 3 months and not get one person apply.
Wow. Wow.
So our location is difficult because as a water operator, you need to be close enough to respond. That's generally within 30 minutes. I know some bigger agencies do an hour, but there is nothing within 30 minutes of us except for this community. And so if you want to extend that out and say let's an hour, then you got Bakersfield. You got maybe go the other direction, you might have Santa Clarita. Now you have the problem of the five. You got fires, you got traffic, and you have, of course, the road closures from the snow. And then if you get a little closer to our community, the road is probably one of the worst roads. And I've lived, Washington, Alaska, and it's probably one of the worst roads when it snows and gets icy. It's not well maintained, let's say, and it's on the shady part of town. So counting on somebody to get in to our area when it snows or when it's icy, you can't count on it. So you're really limited to hiring someone local. And, being in California, the cost of living is really high. So we've seen a big push to people are selling their homes, kicking out the renters, selling their homes, right? So now the cost of a home is say 600,000, and you want someone to come work for you for $16 an hour. How does that equate? And they can't rent anywhere because the renters have been pushed out so that they could sell the houses. And so that in lies the problem with hiring qualified operators. And so, you have to look at that and say, well, how much more can you pay an operator? What's the going rate and where are they going to live? And so we're constantly evaluating that and in general, trying to raise it as much as we can. But again, right now, starting wage for an unexperienced person in the industry is not high enough to pay the bills around here.
That's tough, yeah. But you can't have your personnel making more than the general manager either, which
Well,
probably is getting close with
I
overtime.
mean, and again, it's a mutual water company, so it goes back again to the board who represents the community, and the community members want to see their to go up, right? And the only way to
Right.
pay more is to have water bills go up. So I think the current board is aware of our current crisis with regards to inflation in this area, and I think they're going to evaluate the water assessment going forward and see if we need to raise our rates in April. And I think that's the direction they're going to go.
Yeah, it's probably inescapable with the inflation that's going on right now and the crisis in personnel. And I mean, it's
Yeah.
really no way around it. You're not the only one. You got some unique situations there because of how isolated you are, but you're not the only one that's facing those issues. I mean, it's industry wide across the United States is getting
Mm-hmm.
personnel to work for in water resources. It's it can be hard work. There can be overtime and being called out in the middle of the night, and a lot of people don't want to do it. So it's challenging.
I'm lucky right now. I have a full crew. I have 5 operators and I have 3 people in the office. One of them is working more virtual as far as in the office, but I got a full crew. I'm happy. Everyone's doing a good
Nice.
job. We're getting stuff done. There's no idle time. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And it's busy, busy, busy. We're right in the middle of reads and right in the middle of projects. And of course, leak popped up on Sunday. So then we had to go and jump on the leak and deal with that. End up being a 2-day project, replacing that line and just getting it all packed back in. And so that takes you away. So every time you got something planned in this industry, you come in on Monday morning and it's all out the window and you're doing something different. And that's one of the things I love about this job. And I hope that my operators do too, is that they get to do something different almost every day. It's not the same old thing. You're not just coming in a small water system. You're not just coming in and going, oh, well, I'm the production guy. I'm going to write down numbers at all the tanks and I got to make my rounds and I'm in my truck. And then at the end of the day, I clock out and I go home. No, every day we show up and sometimes the plans have changed. Almost always the plans have changed. And you get to do it all. You get to be a distribution operator. You get to be a treatment operator. You get to be a roofer. You get to be a heavy equipment operator. You get to be a meter reader. I mean, anything you can think of, we pretty much do. And it's a jack of all trades. But you got to be certified and you got to know what you're doing when it comes to the water. And so that's what I really love about it is that just mixing it up every day.
Yeah. But people that just go out and turn on the faucet and expect water to come out just do not understand what goes into that, making that happen until it doesn't happen.
I think most people just go, oh, those guys that drive around in the trucks.
Yeah. they,
That's
yeah,
it.
they got
That's
the
all they
logo on the
know.
side and yeah, that's right. They're
Yeah.
just driving around and but yeah, until you turn on the faucet and water doesn't come out, you don't appreciate them. So you know, it's the same attitude that people don't understand where electricity comes from. You just plug things into the wall socket and electricity comes out, So same with the
Yeah.
water.
Yep.
And there's a lot of work that goes into it and it's amazing, You got a challenging job, that's for sure. So anything else you want to share with us about your job or the challenges, the unique challenges there as we kind of wrap this up? I appreciate your time, by the way, in this. We've gone a little bit longer than I planned, but you got interesting stuff to say.
The only thing is, like I said before, I just enjoy it. It's a great field to be into, and I think if somebody's looking for a change, like right now is the time, because we were talking about how a lot of people are looking to hire, and if you're looking to maybe move up in the water industry, now's the time to look around. And I think there's some open positions out there, maybe in some bigger districts that, or even in these small ones. We really could use good people in these small water districts, and it's and I think all my employees here feel like they're a part of the community and they're doing something good for the community, and working to make sure that everybody has good, ample water. I mean, it's rewarding, and so I would just say, it's a great industry to be in, and even though it has its challenges, I really enjoy it, and I think, like I said, right now is a good time to get into it if someone's looking to get into the water industry.
Great. Rob, thanks so much. You've given us some great insights into your day-to-day operations at a medium-sized water district, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing those things. So, I've known you for a while, and there you were telling me some stuff that I didn't know. So I appreciate that.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thanks, Rob. We'll be talking with you. Bye now.
All right. Bye.
All right. Well, thanks to Rob Carruth for sharing those thoughts and insights on what it means to be a general manager of a medium-sized mutual water company. And as he said, they're a fair size for a mutual water company. Most mutual water companies tend to be pretty small, but 3,000 connections is pretty large for that form of water system management operations and structure, I guess. So he's got some unique challenges up there, as you saw, but we really appreciate Rob coming on and sharing those comments. So we'll kind of wrap things up here. So if you're watching this on replay somewhere else, here's our YouTube channel. We stream into there every Thursday at 9 o'clock Pacific time, 11 o'clock Central time. And so there's a long URL here, but you can just look for us on the Groundwater Guy channel. We do have a Facebook group you can join, and we'll post these up there too. So Groundwater Talk Live Facebook group. If you're interested in being a guest, and we're always interested in having water system operators, vendors, drillers, you name it, anybody that works in the water resources industry, if you have a story to tell and some interesting information to share, we'd love to have you on and chat with you, get the word out on what you do, and just educate people on stuff. The whole purpose here is to kind of give people a different perspective and to really peel back the onion skin, as it were, and look at the inner layers and see how the water industry really operates. So be sure to go here if you want to get on. You can book a slot It's every Thursday at 9 o'clock Pacific time, 11 o'clock Central time. We'd love to have you on. And if you ever need to get a hold of me, easiest way is through LinkedIn. My email is posted up there as well, so you can reach me there, and I'm always happy to chat. We chat with people all the time, and are more than happy to kind of share any information we have, and sometimes we can just really get a handle on problems just right over the phone. So or steer you in the right direction, or just any ideas for the show, any guests you'd like to see. Any questions you might have, please feel free to get in touch with me, and I'm always happy to chat. I always respond. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and my email is there. You can get a hold of me there. So thanks so much for attending, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.